I start with something simple like a tube, and as we know the Borg don't have blue tubes, they have green tubes, so first I change the tube's color from blue to green. And once this looks Borgish enough, I can place it on my texture. If you're not sure if something looks good, you can simply save your texture and go look how it's going to look like. Right here this tube could probably look a little bit squeezed, so I better check as well and see how it looks like. Well, this could look better, but at least it's a good start. Just be warned that this could probably take you several hours to several days until you got everything textured. I worked another few hours now, and I think it looks good. You may notice that I changed the transwarp gates a bit. You can always do this without affecting your UV map, or at least without affecting the other parts of your model. Here a more detailed view of the texture. As you see, I laid several parts of the station over each other. As for Borg ships and other things, it probably doesn't matter that much how it looks like. Okay, so much for adding a texture. Now let's go over and add some faces. But before that, be sure you convert your texture to the GIF data type. Once done, you can open Creator and import your model into it. Then select the whole model and scale it up to around a scale of 30 or bigger, so you don't have to zoom in and out all the time. I also prefer to turn off the grid, as it can be disturbing sometimes, but you don't have to. If you don't see the model's database yet, you can make it visible at the bottom of your window. Our first step is to extract each object out of its container. The red things are containers and the black things are objects. This is not absolutely necessary, but prevents you from getting errors during the final HOB conversion. Once done, you can delete all those empty red containers. Now you can start adding face slots by selecting those faces you want faces to be fired from. Change the drop-down list from object to face and select your faces. You can use up to 16 face slots, so not more than 16 faces where you want faces to be fired from. These are my 8 phase slots. Now simply copy those phases by hitting Ctrl C and Ctrl V. If there's a menu popping up similar to the one in here, simply hit OK. Now we need to create the objects holding those faces. So I go to the Create menu and create as many objects as faces. In the database below I can clearly see the faces I pasted before, and on the right side there's the objects I'm currently creating in green. Now simply drag each face to one of the objects, one by one. And once this is done, you rename all of your objects from slot 01 up to slot 08, or whatever the amount of your slots is. Just be sure not to have more than 16 of those slots. Once you named everything, you pick your newly created phase slots and move them to the beginning of your database. Next thing we have to do is to add some shades and some glows to our model. So first we change the drop down list back to object. Then select the whole model, go to the attributes menu and go to calculate shading. There you first pick light go round and hit apply. Then deselect everything, change the drop down list back to face and select all the faces you want to be glowing in game. Once you got them all selected, you hit modify attributes in the attributes menu and change the shading to be flat shaded. Optionally, you can also make them transparent if you want to. Here you see how transparency looks like. Might be useful to do some warp nazzles or similar. Now we're almost done. You may notice I added some additional glowings. Now the only step left is to change the texture. We need to apply the GIF textures to them. You can do this by hitting the button up there. And in the menu which is going to pop up, you can replace the targas we got from Photoshop with the GIFs we created before. And now we can go over to the final step and creating the BSB tree. Be sure to have the drop down list set to object, then hit Ctrl A to select everything, and then deselect your face slots, otherwise separation will probably fail. Then go to the BSP menu and hit Separate Selected. If you did everything right, separation should succeed now. Now go for the last step and save your model. Now we need to convert FLT file to an HOB file. So drag your texture and your FLT to the location where you saved your converter and open a command line window. First we need to change our work path. You can simply copy it from Microsoft's Explorer. Be sure to have it copied first before you try pasting. And once we're in the right location, we can start converting. We first convert our FLT file into a HOT file using this command. Here you can use the scale parameter. If you notice later on that your model was too small, you could probably scale it up by a factor 10 like I did in here. And if your model is still too small, you can still alter the scale in your newly created hot file by editing this line. As a next step, we need to register the texture. Simply enter this line. Now register the color by entering this. And as a final step, we're going to convert it to the HOB file type by entering this line. As next step, I'm going to place my HOB and my texture in BotF's stbof.res file. As for the texture, it's not absolutely necessary, but you should probably rename them to begin with the same two letters as your HOB file does begin with. You may notice that I only copied one HOB file in there, even though 3 of them are required. The reason is they still need to be edited a bit using Deezer's Ultimate Editor, and I only want to do this once and not 3 times. That's why I do it. So once the files are copied, you need to open Ultimate Editor and open the res file you just copied your HOB stuff into. There's 2 things we need to do in Ultimate Editor. First, we need to assign the correct texture to our HOB. This can be done in the HOB files menu. So down here there are my 2 textures I'm going to assign to. As you see, I renamed my 2 textures as well. Second thing we need to do is to register the texture to BotF.